E-Content Development Course, Business Research Methods Unit, Data Collection. Topic: Primary Methods of Data Collection. Schedule, Questionnaire, Case Study and Survey Method. Objectives: times to know the meaning of schedule and related aspects. Times to understand the meaning of questionnaire, its qualities and guidelines. Times to explain the differences between schedules and questionnaire, its construction and process. Times to describe case study method, sources and characteristics. Times to explain survey method, characteristics, advantages, disadvantages. Introduction. Schedule, questionnaire, case study and survey method are primary methods of data collection. For better understanding, the episode is divided into 5 parts, namely 1. Schedule, kinds and advantages, disadvantages. 2. Questionnaire, qualities and guidelines. 3. Schedules and questionnaire, its construction and process. 4. Case study method, sources and characteristics. 5. Survey method, characteristics, advantages, disadvantages. Schedule. Schedule is a term that is frequently used in the process of data collection. It is also a format that contains set of general as well as specific questions arranged in order that has to be filled by the researcher. It is a standard tool for gathering data. The researcher asks questions to the respondent and the response received would be filled by the researcher. Thus, a schedule is constructed to make all the possible observations so that the research is successfully carried forward. Through this written document, fresh data can be generated. A predetermined schedule envisages the required data that can be verifiable and could also avoid biases and misinterpretation of the observed data that could be clarified. A schedule is a form in which observation of an object and the events are recorded in a systematic way for the specific purpose for the research study. The information to be collected should be determined on the basis of objectives that are needed for the study. In the schedule, the researcher has to depict the information data that one wants to know during the research. The information data presented in the paper has to be set in a proper sequence and placed in the order of the format. The collected information data is structured with possible alternative options such as yes or no, good, better or bad. Sufficient space must be given in between the options to encircle and write qualitative responses or to tick wherever required. There are basically 4 different ways to gather data. Observation schedule. Here the researcher will be able to gather data through the phenomenon called observation is known as observation schedule. Rating schedule. Here the researcher collects the required information by observing the attitude and opinions of people by asking them questions or may even use standardized scales that are available based on the research of interest. Interview schedule. The researcher prepares a set of questions in a format and poses those questions to the interviewee and fill the gathered data in the required format by the researcher himself/herself. This is called as interview schedule. Document schedule. In this type of schedule, the information can be gathered on the basis of the documents available. This type of schedule is generally used for writing the history of the documents. Advantages. 1. The researcher gets valuable information or data by the interviewee through the schedule. 2. The researcher can understand the emotional status of the interviewee. 3. The researcher can clarify the doubts that arise on the spot. 4. The researcher is involved directly in gathering data or information from the interviewee, therefore there exists enough space for correction if necessary. 5. Returns are 100%. Disadvantages. 1. Interview schedule is a costly method wherein there is an excess expenditure in terms of finance money. 2. Interview schedule only covers few people. 3. In the hands of an underexperienced researcher, the interview schedule is a failure. 2. Questionnaire. Questionnaire is another method used for data collection. A questionnaire refers to a format that contains questions that are arranged in an order that is sent to the interviewee by mail or post seeking responses from him or her. Questionnaires are written formats consisting of a series of questions, the answers to which are recorded by the respondents. The respondents read the questions, comprehend what is expected, and then write the answers. In a schedule, it is the researcher who asks questions and fills in the required responses, whereas in a questionnaire the respondents themselves record the required information by answering accordingly whatever is asked in the respective questionnaire. It is very important to keep in mind that the questions in the questionnaire should be prepared in a manner that is clear, precise, and easy to comprehend. It is always advisable that a printed form of the questionnaire is available for the process. Lengthy questions must be avoided. Each question must lead to a subsequent one. When the respondents are scattered across places, this method can prove to be useful in collecting the required information or data. Quite often it so happens that it proves to become very difficult to reach out to large numbers of interviewees from faraway places. Therefore, the researcher can make good use of this method to collect the required information from the interviewees. The information collected with the help of this method is duly filled by the respondents themselves. Objectives: 1. To collect data or information from the respondents as they are scattered in wide areas. 2. To collect reliable and accurate data. Type of questions. The researcher can prepare different types of questions on the basis of their study. These questions can be classified into the following types. A. Open-ended questions. B. Closed-ended questions. C. Pictorial questions. D. Dichotomous questions. E. Multiple choice questions. F. Leading questions. G. Ambiguous questions. H. Ranking item questions. Qualities of a good questionnaire. 1. The researcher should find out the whereabouts of the interviewees beforehand. 2. The researcher must identify the interviewee's level of understanding. 3. The researcher must give priorities to the educational level of the respondents. The researcher should prepare a cover letter that has to be attached with the questionnaire. The purpose and the objective of the questionnaire has to be clearly stated. Covering letter should contain the purpose and objectives that are clearly be mentioned. Guidelines. 1. The important guidelines are to be mentioned on top of the questionnaire. 2. Mention as, please read questions carefully and tick mark for appropriate answers mentioned below. 3. Please do not omit any questions. Advantages. A. Questionnaires are found to be a best method to conduct the interview for an interviewee from a distant place of stay by sending the questionnaire only. B. It is less expensive compared to other methods. C. Questionnaires save time, money, and manpower. Disadvantages. A. Questionnaires are not applicable to illiterate people. B. A poor handwriting can dampen the spirit of questionnaire. C. There is a possibility that the interviewee may leave a few questions unanswered. D. The researcher might be unavailable to motivate the interviewee to answer the questionnaire during the process. E. In the absence of researcher, the interviewee may not understand certain questions. F. The researcher may encounter with poor responses. G. One cannot be sure that the respondent have filled the questionnaire by themselves. 3. Construction of schedules and questionnaire. As already discussed, there is a similarity between schedules and questionnaire. But the only feature that differentiates the two is the filling up of the responses. Both of them contain a set of questions constructed logically with alternatives in a sequence that is the same for all the respondents. While the responses in a schedule are duly filled by the researcher, the latter is written by the respondents themselves. Schedules are used for the process of interviewing face-to-face, whereas questionnaires are at times mailed to respondents spread across over the period of time to collect information. Interview schedule is filled by the researcher, whereas the questionnaire is furnished by the respondent. The interview schedule is applicable to all categories, but questionnaire is pertinent to educated respondents who can read and write. During an interview, the researcher is present to clarify the question to the respondents, whereas in a questionnaire method, the researcher is unavailable to clarify and encourage the respondents to fill the required fields. In the interview process, the researcher can observe the body language and expression of the respondents, whereas in the questionnaire method, the researcher is unable to observe those precious movements. Interview schedule is considered to be time-consuming and requires funds and manpower, whereas in the questionnaire method there is less expense and manpower involved. In the interview schedule, a small population can be covered, whereas the questionnaire method reaches a large population. Data collected through interview schedule yield high-quality data, so the researcher can easily depend on it, whereas in the questionnaire method, one cannot be sure the data filled by. The process of construction of a schedule and a questionnaire. The process of construction of questions with limited changes among the two are: 1. Collected data needs determination. The data can be determined by a deep analysis of the research, objectives, hypothesis, definitions that are used in the study. Therefore, the researcher has to select the topic carefully and go through the research. 2. Determining respondents' level. The researcher has to be clear about who the respondents are and with who data has to be collected from. The level of understanding, all these criteria need to be diligently worked out. 3. Decide on data gathering method. The researcher by this step has to finalize the data gathering method. The suitable method of gathering information or data should be chosen according to the study. 4. Instrument drafting. After determining the data, the researcher has to outline the instrument draft by listing out broad categories of data. X. If the researcher has conducted his study on mobile phone usage, it may then consists of sections such as brand awareness, SIM card usage, brand choice, excessive phone usage, awareness on applications in the phone, etc. This has to be drafted beforehand. Later, these sections need to be sequentially put in order. Heading and subheading must be placed respectively. 5. Evaluation of the drafted instrument. In consultation with other field experts, the researcher has to examine each question that is in the drafted instrument. 6. Pre-testing. The revised draft has to be pre-tested to test the applicability of the instrument. If required, addition and omission of the particulars need to be finalized. Framing questions and word construction. Framing questions and word construction is a difficult task, as the interpretation and the understanding level of words may differ from person to person. Hence, the researcher should keep in mind the capability and follow characteristics while framing questions. 1. Shared vocabulary. The constructed words and framed questions should mean same for different respondents. The questions must be constructed in such manner that the shared vocabulary should mean common to all respondents. To exactness, the words used in questionnaire should reflect same meaning as the content intended to mean. For X, a word like income should be stated exactly as family income per month or annually. 3. Simplicity. While framing questions, the words must be simple. For X, what is your marital status? May elicit the marital status or marital problems. Instead, it is better to write as marital status of the respondents followed by options as married, unmarried, widowed, divorced, separated could be written. The respondents would choose appropriate answer among these options. 4. Avoid embarrassing questions. Many respondents do not want to disclose or discuss in public their private matters. For X, premarital relationship, sexual experiences, etc. These types of questions have to be avoided. 5. Open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are questions without options. In other words, when a researcher constructs a tool, he prepares questions without options. This type of method would give free scope for respondents to fill their qualitative answers. Open-ended questions are useful for in-depth interviews. However, the compilation and classification of responses could be difficult to convert these responses into quantitative one. 6. Choice questions. The research questions here have two options such as yes or no, true or false. For X, do you own a cell phone? The option may be written either yes or no. Among the two, the respondents would select the most appropriate one. 7. Multiple choice questions. These types of questions can have more than two options. For X, mostly preferred application in the phone. Options are A. Phone calls, B. Social media, C. Playing games. D. Message app, etc. is an example for multiple choice questions. 8. Long questions. Long questions have to be avoided as they seem to be confusing. 9. Details in the format. The researcher has to include the following details while framing schedules or questionnaires. A. The name of the institution collecting data has to appear on the top of the front page of the format. B. Title of the study must appear. C. Serial number should be mentioned for each question. D. Page number at the bottom of the format has to be assigned. E. Content-wise or section-wise bifurcation has to be done. X. First phase, sociodemographic data. Second phase, content-wise question must be prepared. F. Spacing, in between words and sentences proper spacing must be given. Enough space has to be provided in case of qualitative interview and for open-ended questions. G. Paper. The questions need to be printed on a good quality paper. H. Margins. 1-inch margin on the left side and half-inch margin on the other sides need to be provided. 4. Case study method. Case study method is a very popular method of collecting information of personal life of an individual or a group of people. Case study method is based on the case study in which an individual, group, institution or phenomena is recognized as unit of study and various aspects of the units are studied deeply. It is a way of organizing social data so as to preserve the unitary character or the social object being studied. Case study is a method of exploring and analyzing the life of a social unit, that unit be a person or a family or an institution or a cultural unit or an entire unit in depth is called as a social microscope. Case study is a form of qualitative analysis involving a very careful and complete observation of a person, a situation, or an institution. A case study is unique in nature where it cannot be compared with another. Case study is comprehensive study of a person, situation, community, or any other social unit in depth. The purpose is to understand the life cycle of the unit under the study or the interaction between the factors that explain the present status or development over a period of time. A case study aims at studying everything about something rather than something about everything. Sources of case study. Sources for case study can be obtained from various sources, such as an individual who is alive can be interviewed, through questionnaires, interview schedule, personal interviews, or observations from newspapers, diaries, autobiography, and photographs also can be used as a source of case study. Case study method is considered to be a gateway and the final destination of abstract knowledge. Case study method cannot be called as a complete unit because anything could be left out. Characteristics. The case study method has certain characteristics. They are: 1. The case study method is a study of a social unit in its entity. 2. In case study method, the researcher focuses on a specific field. 3. In this method, the subject of the study is recognized as a unit and it is studied in all its aspects. 4. Case study method takes too much of time in analyzing particular units or events. 5. Case study method is a useful method for the study of interaction between variables. Advantages. 1. It enriches the knowledge of the researcher. 2. The information can be used for framing a hypothesis. 3. Case study can be conducted practically in any type of social setting. 4. Through case study, the researcher can understand wide range of insights of human life. Limitations. 1. Generalization cannot be made on the basis of result of case study method. Generalization cannot be made. 2. Case study method is quite loose and unscientific in nature. 3. There is enough scope for errors due to faulty perception on the part of the researcher. 4. The involvement of time and money is more in this method. We survey. It is another method of collecting primary data. In this method, data can be collected with a large sampling. Survey is carried out in an intensive, one-on-one in-depth interview. It is a fact-finding method in research. Here involves collection of data directly from population of a larger sampling. In survey method, data may be gathered through observation, interviewing, or even by mailing the questionnaires. A survey may cover all units of a given universe. A survey forms a broad-based investigation. It covers large number of units in which the findings can be generalized. Characteristics of survey method. The following are the characteristics of survey method. 1. Survey is conducted in natural or field setting. 2. Data is collected directly from the respondents. 3. Survey method covers large population. 4. Survey covers definite geographical area, be it a city, district, or a state. Advantages. Survey method has its own advantages. They are: 1. The versatile characteristics of survey method are its strength. Through survey, many types of information can be gathered, such as personal characteristics, socioeconomic data, opinions, experiences, etc. 2. Survey method is helpful in drawing generalization on a large population. 3. Survey method involves various methods such as observation, interview, questionnaire method, etc. 4. Survey methods awaken the researcher on uncovered problems. Disadvantages: survey method has its own limitations. They are: 1. Survey method is expensive in nature. 2. Survey method depends on primary data directly collected from the respondents and also depends on willingness and cooperation of the respondents. 3. Survey method also depends on oral conversation and behavior. Therefore, there are chances of misleading answers. Conclusion: schedule, questionnaire, case study and survey are different methods, part of primary data collection. The researcher can utilize these methods according to the needs of the study. All these methods have their own process, has to be studied thoroughly and understand before administering them. Through these methods, important data can be gathered, which directs the researcher to accrue an important information that are required for the study.